Candace Martinez's childhood stands in stark contrast to the vibrant tourist mecca of Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Candace really never had a chance. From the time she was born, she was a child, unfortunately, surrounded by neglect.
After her parents' divorce when she's 5, Candace bounces between a drug-addicted mother and an abusive father. By age 12, she drops out of school and spends most of her time on the street.
She was constantly in a state of change. Candace felt like she was alone in the world and she had to fend for herself.
Candace began drinking, using pills, using drugs, 12 years old, running the streets of Santa Fe.
Despite being on the streets, Candace knew that this wasn't the life that she really wanted and was smart enough to know that she needed to break that cycle.
Then one day, she finds a light at the end of the tunnel.
She saw a commercial for a famous home for wayward children in Nebraska.
With the help of a social worker, Candace moves 1,000 miles away from her broken life in New Mexico. And for the next 5 years, she thrives. She even graduates high school and at 18 years old enrolls in college. But just as everything seems to be going her way, her life takes a sinister turn.
She meets a guy, and this guy was abusive toward her, and this sent her in a spiral back into her old ways, and she didn't even complete her freshman year.
Candace was not prepared for life. She did not have those skills. When you don't have those skills, you do the best thing. You run away.
So she dropped out of school. She went right back to her bad lifestyle. Drugs, running the streets, partying, disappearing for weeks on end.
Part of this is because she was really never given the tools to cope with adversity, and the other part was this was something that she knew.
But the troubled 19-year-old gets a second chance at life when a cousin from the Washington, D.C. suburb of Burke, Virginia, invites her to come out east and live with her.
She offered her a way out, to get your life together, go to school, get back on the right track.
Candace felt excited about the opportunity to once again start over. She felt like she could make a new her.
She packs up and heads to Virginia. Within just a few months, things are already looking up.
She got to work on remaking her life again. She got a job selling memberships at a gym.
She enrolled in the local community college. She was working on a degree in technology, radiological technology.
It might look like her days of making bad decisions are over, but they have just begun. That fall, while studying on campus, Candace eyes an attractive fellow student, 19-year-old Dave Williams.
He was handsome. He had a beautiful smile, long braids. Candace was definitely attracted.
Never one to be bashful with men, she prances over to him and strikes up a conversation.
Her pickup line was, "I like your hair, can you braid my hair like that?" And Dave thought that was pretty cool, and they began talking.
It's a brief encounter, but Candace is intrigued. The two exchange numbers and start to talk regularly. She can tell right away that Dave is different than the other guys she's dated.
He's an average guy. He shows her respect. He's nice to her. He's kind. He's courteous.
He didn't drink and he didn't do drugs. Dave seemed like just your standard suburban good kid.
He tells her he's studying engineering and admits that he's a bit of a mama's boy.
His parents had divorced, but they lived very close to each other, and Dave lived with both of them. Mainly he lived with his mother. He relied heavily on his mother.
He had a promising future ahead of him, and the icing on the cake was that he wanted her. He was all about her.
She can't believe how lucky she is. After only a few weeks of dating, the college freshmen spend every free moment together.
They were inseparable. They were actually infatuated with each other. It happened so fast.
But before these young lovers can ride off into the sunset, Dave gets some troubling news. His father, an assistant financial controller at a resort, is arrested for embezzlement and sent to jail for almost a year. Dave is devastated.
Dave's home life, which had been a solid rock for many years, was suddenly crumbling.
Candace does her best to be there for her boyfriend.
Why don't we move in together?
She thought that the best way for Dave to get out of this rut, this depression, was for them to move in together. They could be together 24/7. They could be happy.
After only a month of dating, the college couple gets an apartment in Chantilly, Virginia, 15 miles west of Burke. But soon realize they've bitten off more than they can chew.
They had no financial skills. If you rent a place, you have to pay the rent in a timely fashion every month. You have to sometimes pay the electricity, you have to pay the gas, you have to pay the water.
They virtually had no money. Dave didn't have a job. He was depressed about his family situation. So instead of like normal people and getting another job and finding a legal way of paying the rent, Dave suggested that they rob a bank.
At first, the 19-year-old thinks he's joking, but quickly realizes her man is dead serious.
Dave had worked in a bank before, and he knew how bank tellers worked. He made it clear to her how they could pull this off.
The former teller wants to hit his old bank, just 20 minutes away in Vienna, Virginia.
This was one where he had familiarity and was able to convey to Candace that there's a certain comfort level in terms of knowing who's in there, where the tellers are, how the security is set up.
She knows that if she's not down with the plan, she might risk losing the love of her life.
She had never had such a stable figure in her life as Dave was. And at this point, she wanted to preserve the relationship. And so she was willing to do anything that it took, even going along with this crazy idea of robbing a bank to keep that relationship alive.
Let's do this. Come on, let's rob a bank. Okay, get it. Hey, how much money do you think?
Excited, the two college students pull an all-nighter, but instead of cramming for exams, they prepare for their first ever bank heist.
They got on the computer and they typed up a note and printed it out. They cut it up and they put it on the front side of a shoebox so that the shoebox could be used to collect the money.
This was carefully planned out. He wanted to make sure that she felt secure.
The only snag is that if Dave sets foot in the bank, his former co-workers might recognize him.
So Candace sort of volunteered that she would do it.
I can do that. That's easy.
She agrees to fly solo inside the bank.
She wouldn't have to say anything. She could just hand the note over on the box and take the note back, not leaving any evidence.
And her boyfriend is confident that the teller will hand the cash right over. But in case anything goes wrong, he'll be right outside in the getaway car.
Dave told Candace it would be like stealing candy from a baby.
1 week later, the couple makes their move.
It was the middle of the day. They pull up to this bank. They're both in the car. It's really tense.
So Dave was worried. He wasn't going into the bank. Candace was going into the bank. So he had an idea, which was have her be on the cell phone. The two of them could be in constant contact during the robbery.
Candace grabs her cell, gives her man a quick kiss, and then casually gets out of the car. Dave keeps the engine running.
And so, before she went in for the robbery, he called her, and they were on the phone, and she is talking on the phone as she walks into the bank, carrying the box with the note on the front.
Despite all of their preparation, there's one precaution they didn't take.
There was no covering of Candace's face. They hadn't planned for that. They just were immature.
She felt that I'm nondescript anyway. I'm just a little Latin girl, and I'm like all the rest. No one will point me out. We all look alike.
The bold young woman enters the bank, holds the shoebox in one hand, and talks with Dave on her cell phone in the other.
Her entrance was excellent because it did not attract attention.
She looked like an average person making a deposit or dropping something off. No one would suspect that she was robbing this bank.
She does her best to avoid the cameras and approaches the first teller. Candace smiles and slides the box towards the teller, casually chatting with Dave all the while.
The note wanted $70,000, and it instructed the teller to hand it over, and that the robber had a gun, and that either the teller or the person next to the teller would get shot if the money wasn't handed over.
Terrified, the woman does as instructed.
The teller put as much money as she could into the box, as quickly as she could,
In the minutes that it took for Candace to rob this bank, the teller put in $14,480 in this shoebox.
Once outside, she walks briskly to the car, careful not to draw attention. The couple speeds off, elated at what they just did. Candace is amazed at how easy it is to pull off a bank robbery.
No police, no chases, no one got hurt, and they got a substantial amounts of money. So I'm sure they thought they hit payday.
To celebrate, the couple goes on a shopping spree.
All they could think of was spend, spend, spend. They spent it on designer purses, a car, TVs, electronics.
In just a week, thanks to their now lavish lifestyle, they quickly burn through their cash. But they have a foolproof way to solve that problem.
They decided to rob another bank.
Once Candace succeeded in the Vienna bank robbery, this improved her self-esteem, gave her some real power, and it made her feel much more valuable to be in this relationship with David.
Just 9 days after their first robbery, while authorities are trying to figure out who the mysterious robber is, the couple hits a bank from the same chain, 7 miles south in Manassas, Virginia.
The MO was the same. Dave was the getaway car guy, the same note, in the same box.
But this time, the bank robbing lovers are disappointed with the haul.
They got, I think, $3,200 out of that. Wasn't a big hit. Gotten $14,000 before, so they quickly decided to do another robbery.
The very next day, they strike again. This time, a bank 20 miles east in Springfield, and things are much more tense.
The teller was really slow. She was nervous. She was afraid. And Candace got more bold and cocky.
Candace said, "Speed it up."
Speed it up, or someone's gonna get hurt.
The teller puts the money in the box. They get about $6,000 from this robbery, and Candace escapes.
Because they didn't get as much money as they wanted to in the last robbery, they know that they really need to step it up. And by doing this, she's feeling stronger, more accomplished, braver.
Candace doesn't hide her identity during any of the robberies. And lucky for her, any images the bank cameras happen to capture are useless.
The banks had not gotten a good image of her. The technology of surveillance cameras in banks was not great.
All the authorities have to go on is a vague description of the brash bank robber. With 3 heists in 3 weeks, they're on a roll and hungry for more, so the young lovers plan their next move. But Dave wants to up the ante. He hands Candace a .38 caliber revolver.
This time, Dave gave Candace a gun, a .38. He apparently borrowed the gun from his stepdad, not telling the stepdad what he was going to be using it for.
He gave her a gun because if she had one, the tellers would probably respond faster, give her more money.
Just a week after their last robbery, one afternoon the outlaw lovers drive 20 minutes to a bank in Ashburn, Virginia. While Dave idles by the entrance, she saunters into the bank, gun tucked away in her purse, cell phone to her ear, and a shoebox in her hand.
She walks up to the counter, she puts her purse on there. She slowly pulls out a gun just a little bit to show the teller, just enough so that the teller knew she meant business.
Afraid for her life, the teller quickly does as she's told. With the box now overflowing with cash, Candace hops in the car with her man, and the two take off.
This time, they hit it big. She walked out with nearly $25,000.
It's another perfect bank robbery, but their luck might have finally run out.
What she didn't know was this time, the camera up behind the teller was getting a good picture of her.
So this particular bank had a more advanced security system. So their bank surveillance actually captured her face in full detail.
The cameras not only took a picture of her, but the outside was able to capture the car.
With this new evidence, local authorities team up with the FBI to hunt down this mystery female who's brazenly robbing banks. They send the latest bank surveillance footage of Candace and the getaway car to every television channel in the U.S.
Suddenly, the news media catch on to this. This woman has been robbing these banks while using a cell phone, and we called her the cell phone bandit. The fact that there was video footage sent the story careening around the world.
Despite their brand new widescreen TV, Dave and Candace have no clue that federal agents are hot on their trail.
They were living in this Bonnie and Clyde fantasy world. They didn't know that they were plastered all over the 24-hour news cycle.
But only a few days after their fourth robbery, reality sets in. Dave's mother calls him after seeing Candace on the news, and he panics.
He'd been a good boy, he'd been a law-abiding guy, and he realized suddenly something clicked, that he needed to get back on the right track.
1 week after their fourth and final robbery, Dave turns himself in to the Fairfax County Police Station.
You're dealing with a young person. You're not dealing with a hardened criminal. The gig was up. The game is over.
And he immediately gives up Candace.
He flipped without hesitation and told them that it was his girlfriend. So the FBI and the police begin to stake out their apartment. Eventually, Candace shows up and she's arrested.
Realizing there's no way out, she comes clean. But like Dave, she doesn't hesitate to turn on her lover, saying it was all Dave's idea.
So then we robbed a bank.
They were both charged with conspiracy to commit bank robbery and use of a firearm, which adds 5 years to any other crime.
They both plead guilty to the charges and are sentenced to 12 years without parole.
They're ordered to give back all the stuff that they had bought, but also to pay back the cash that they'd stolen from the banks. When they walk out of prison, they are responsible for repaying around $43,000.
Candace Martinez cashed in her good sense so she could live a fairy tale life with her college sweetheart. In Hollywood, Florida, Janae Rembert desperately clings to a man who has a warped way of expressing his love. Growing up in Miami, Florida, Janae Rembert never knew what it was like to be part of a loving family.
She was one of 4 children that her mother had with 4 different men. Some of the other children lived with foster parents or with grandparents.
She was the cutest little girl. She had the widest smile. But behind that smile, my sister was really sad, and she was living a very hard life.
She's never even set eyes on her dad, and her mother is not the best caretaker, to say the least.
Janae wasn't fed or taken care of a lot. She would go to school and smell like urine and had to get sent home because she wasn't dressed properly.
At 6 years old, social services finally steps in, citing neglect. She's removed from her mother's care. As the years go by, the young girl bounces from foster homes to family members. At the young age of 15, she runs away to take her chances on the streets.
She just felt so unloved. She felt like, she had no one to turn to. So that's where she ran away in search of love.
She was just running away from that profound pain that she felt as a little girl. And she was just looking for a place, some place, where she felt she truly belonged.
For the next 3 years, the troubled teen floats around the city, honing her self-destructive behavior.
She became a whole different person. She started doing really bad things.
She has no parental supervision around, has no family dynamics that keep her safe. So they end up consorting with people that are less law-abiding.
She did not have a job. She wasn't in school. She's sleeping over here on this couch. She's sleeping over here on that couch. She's using drugs.
To fund her drug habit, Janae sells the only thing she can, her body.
She starts prostituting for money, but she made the decision that that lifestyle was working for her, and that's what she did.
Janae was abandoned very early in her life, and therefore she started to develop this me against the world mentality. But all of that was a mask for what she truly felt, which was that she was alone.
And she is living pillar to post, sleeping here, sleeping there, using drugs, not connected to anything of real value. So one day, she's out looking for dope.
That's when friends tell her about a Haitian-born dealer, 31-year-old McKinley Desir. He's a one-stop shop to get your fix.
Thanks, dude. Take it easy.
Janae tracks him down in the parking lot of a local motel. She tells him she's looking to score cocaine and flashes some cash she earned turning tricks. But McKinley takes one look at her and says he has another payment planned in mind.
I want some more than your money.
He was a very nice-looking young man who knew how to talk to young women. He knew what to say. He knew how to say it. He was very effective.
McKinley had two sides to him. One, the personable side you would see when you first met him, and then after a while you would see the business side of him.
The wayward teenager has just unknowingly wandered into the trap of the ultimate street predator, a true hustler who slings drugs and pimps on the side.
He preyed on people who were insecure or didn't have a home or were looking for love.
And right away he sees that Janae is just his type.
He could see the need and the loss and the abandonment in her. It was probably in her eyes.
They drive 20 miles north to Hollywood, Florida, where he lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. Desperate to get high, and no stranger to selling her body, she agrees to swap sex for the drugs. The smooth Haitian shows her a tenderness she's never experienced. Afterward, McKinley makes his new girl a proposition she can't refuse.
McKinley invited Janae to live with him so she could have a household to live in, something that she didn't have before.
I get you the fix you need. Look out for me.
He's promising her all the drugs that she might need. He's good looking. He's got a nice car. He's saying all the right things.
The lost teenager can't believe her luck.
Janae was damaged emotionally. McKinley gave her this false sense of feeling secure, that everything would be okay. And she came to call him daddy. And that's very symbolic because she never truly had her father in her life.
She was all in. She felt like she was gonna finally be at home and somebody was gonna love her.
She moves in, but McKinley makes it clear she must earn her keep.
And all she had to do was to sell her body, make some money.
She doesn't hesitate and does whatever he asks of her.
Yes, Daddy.
Before long, McKinley becomes more to Janae than just her pimp.
She fell in love with him. B saw that she's a prophet and that he can put more money in his pocket.
It's quite possible that she really did love him, but perhaps this was some sort of a Stockholm syndrome where a person who has the power of life and death over you, you see this person as a god, and you mistake whatever moments of kindness as their perhaps caring about you, but they really don't.
Pretty soon, the silver-tongued hustler realizes that this girl is different.
It's not a bad idea.
She's very intelligent and she's a go-getter. And McKinley saw that. McKinley saw that this is a woman that is business-minded, she's smart, and she's gonna make me money.
After just a few months, he gives his best girl even more responsibility. He promotes her to be his right-hand woman, the enforcer, someone to help him keep his stable of women in line.
She looked after the girls, explaining to him what they would need to be doing. It was her job to make sure that the girls gave the money and everything they received, and she would keep control of them.
I'll be watching you.
For the first time in her life, she felt like she was a part of something.
She jumps into her new job with both feet and proves herself right away, devising a way to drum up new business.
She created an email address and used that email address to create an account on the social bulletin board. Now, after Janae sets up the site, he would use her to take pictures of girls and post them for escort services.
Pretty soon, business is booming.
So Janae would get a response to her posting. You know, so guys looking for a date with these girls. She was in control of where the meet was going to be, or when the time was going to be.
But McKinley's stable of working girls aren't exactly willing recruits. Like Janae, most are addicts he lured in with the deadly combination of a free high and false hope.
He promised these girls a better life. He promised them that they'll have clothes, money, stability, things that they probably didn't have or that they looked forward to.
But then after the carrot comes the stick.
As soon as they grew comfort, he would pull them back and say, okay, time for you to go to work.
We needed this.
To keep his girls in the family, the self-proclaimed daddy takes no chances.
He would keep the clothing for the girls, their phones, any of their personal articles in his house where he had control of them.
He padlocks the women in an efficiency attached to his apartment so they can't escape.
And then he would take them around to whatever motels or areas for these girls to have sex.
He keeps his girls docile with pills and crack cocaine. The only time they see the light of day is when he forces them to go to work.
The women, they were sleeping with 4 or 5 men a day, $60 to $100 a pop, but they didn't get any of the money.
While they're servicing the men, Janae embraces her role as enforcer, waiting in the bathroom to make sure everything goes as planned.
Well, Janae would follow whatever instruction McKinley gave her. If McKinley said to go slap the girl to keep her in line, she would do it.
Janae was on the team. She was willing to do whatever she needed to do for McKinley to be happy, for their business to be successful.
Because McKinley basically views the other women in the house as slaves, Janae was manipulated into thinking the same way, almost identifying with the aggressor, because she felt that he had saved her from a life of peril on the streets and owed that to him.
Together, they hold as many as 8 girls at a time against their will. McKinley does whatever it takes to keep them in line.
I would start yelling at them. When the yelling wasn't giving him the response that he needed, then hitting them was the next step. And that progressed all the way up to putting a gun to their head. One of the punishments he would do to them is put a gun to the side of their head and dry fire the gun.
They don't know if there's bullets in the chamber or what. But just imagine what that must have been like for these women. They didn't know if they were going to die locked up in this room.
For 3 years, their sex trade operation runs like a well-oiled machine, with McKinley at the helm and Janae by his side. The partnership is so strong, she even asks for a special ceremony.
I don't know if it was a legal wedding, but Janae wanted to get married, so it's a reassurance that he wasn't going to get rid of her, that he was going to keep her forever.
Then late one night that summer, Janae takes her loyalty to her new husband one step further. While 2 of their girls are resting in between Johns inside the efficiency, Daddy lets his guard down and forgets to lock their door.
He had fallen asleep. 2 of his captive women, Angel and Diamond, were there. They were awake. They chose that opportunity as a time to get some pills that they both wanted to take.
They sneak back to their room, but don't exactly cover their tracks. As soon as McKinley wakes up and sees his stash missing, there are only 2 possible culprits. Furious, he grabs the girls.
He called Janae. The 4 of them got into the car. The 2 captive women didn't know what was going on.
They drive down a dark, secluded street and arrive at an abandoned house. He orders his wife to discipline the girls.
Teach these girls a lesson.
Come on, get out.
Janae got Angel out of the car, took her into the house.
McKinley keeps Diamond in the car with him and waits. Inside the abandoned house, according to Angel, the enforcer beats her with her bare hands.
She ended up knocking one of her teeth out.
After beating down Angel, one of the girls that she and her husband, McKinley, Daddy Desir, hold captive, she wraps her hands around the girl's throat.
She ended up choking her into unconsciousness. And by the time the woman came to, they were on their way back to the car.
Janae then grabs their other captive, Diamond, and drags her into the house for her beating.
Meanwhile, Angel is in the car. Daddy told her to put her head down, and he's blasting her and telling her, "You better be glad that we didn't kill you."
The message is received.
But the threats they did to these girls was to let them know that if they didn't comply with what they wanted them to do, there were consequences, up until death.
Janae is so brainwashed by McKinley that she becomes an extension of him, and she does whatever he asks her to do, no questions asked. She wanted to show him that she was completely on his side.
Janae has never been a violent person, but when she got with McKinley, he hardened her. He made her someone she's not.
While this husband and wife team keep their girls in line, the Boynton Beach police are closing in. They have uncovered the online escort service ads that Janae has been posting and set up a sting operation.
We responded to an ad, and it was for 2 girls special. We had an undercover officer posed as a John, staying at a hotel. We had surveillance teams in place.
Janae and one of their girls show up to the motel room.
You could see that Janae was clearly in control of the conversation and what was going down. They discussed what sex act they were going to do and how much money it was.
With the deal in place, police swarm the hotel room and arrest both women. They're hauled down to the station for questioning. Janae is first up. During the sting, it was obvious she's the one in charge.
It became pretty clear to the police that Janae was the one behind those ads.
The hardened enforcer is calm and cool. She refuses to give up any details of their operation, including her husband.
She was loyal. I asked her if anybody else was involved in it, and she said solely herself.
But the other girl is visibly shaken. Seeing a chance to finally wake up from this nightmare, she tells investigators everything she knows about Janae and McKinley. As the girl talks, it becomes clear to police that this is more than just a simple prostitution case. And apparently, they aren't the only ones interested in the Haitian pimp.
We were contacted shortly after by the FBI, who, unbeknownst to us, was also working a case on McKinley. And we got together and spoke about my case and their cases.
The FBI have spoken with another victim that backs up all the claims against Janae and her daddy.
One of the girls who was being held hostage in McKinley's apartment got a hold of his phone and texted her mother about what was happening. So that fact, coupled with what happened with the arrest in the hotel room, is making it pretty clear to the authorities that there is a sex ring happening here.
Janae's instantly arrested and charged with sex trafficking. Realizing she's caught, she finally comes clean.
This agent got her to see the severity of the situation she was in. And so Janae, understanding and realizing that, knew that she really had no choice but to turn against McKinley.
I was just totally taken aback because I didn't know she was this far in. I didn't know she had became this person, and it was just so sad.
Investigators immediately hunt down McKinley outside of their home and also arrest him for sex trafficking. Although multiple women were victimized, only 2 are courageous enough to speak out. That spring, husband and wife go to trial and plead not guilty. McKinley Desir is convicted of 1 count of conspiracy to commit sex trafficking and 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, threats, fraud, or coercion, and is sentenced to life in prison.
Janae got convicted of 1 count of conspiracy of committing sex trafficking. She got 15 years for her role in trafficking these girls.
The 21-year-old now understands that her desperation to be part of a family and find love made her vulnerable to the likes of McKinley. She spends her time preparing for the day she will be released.
I understand that in prison she is thriving. She's getting some education. She feels true remorse for what she's done.
She's mentoring those who are with her. She knows that when she gets out, she wants a better life. She wants to be a model citizen.
Janae treated these women so badly, possibly because of her own upbringing and how dysfunctional that it was. And so she became desensitized to the feelings of others. Plus, McKinley was the only person who seemed to have validated her and given her a love that she never had in her life before.
Candace Martinez's childhood stands in stark contrast to the vibrant tourist mecca of Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Candace really never had a chance. From the time she was born, she was a child, unfortunately, surrounded by neglect.
After her parents' divorce when she's 5, Candace bounces between a drug-addicted mother and an abusive father. By age 12, she drops out of school and spends most of her time on the street.
She was constantly in a state of change. Candace felt like she was alone in the world and she had to fend for herself.
Candace began drinking, using pills, using drugs, 12 years old, running the streets of Santa Fe.
Despite being on the streets, Candace knew that this wasn't the life that she really wanted and was smart enough to know that she needed to break that cycle.
Then one day, she finds a light at the end of the tunnel.
She saw a commercial for a famous home for wayward children in Nebraska.
With the help of a social worker, Candace moves 1,000 miles away from her broken life in New Mexico. And for the next 5 years, she thrives. She even graduates high school and at 18 years old enrolls in college. But just as everything seems to be going her way, her life takes a sinister turn.
She meets a guy, and this guy was abusive toward her, and this sent her in a spiral back into her old ways, and she didn't even complete her freshman year.
Candace was not prepared for life. She did not have those skills. When you don't have those skills, you do the best thing. You run away.
So she dropped out of school. She went right back to her bad lifestyle. Drugs, running the streets, partying, disappearing for weeks on end.
Part of this is because she was really never given the tools to cope with adversity, and the other part was this was something that she knew.
But the troubled 19-year-old gets a second chance at life when a cousin from the Washington, D.C. suburb of Burke, Virginia, invites her to come out east and live with her.
She offered her a way out, to get your life together, go to school, get back on the right track.
Candace felt excited about the opportunity to once again start over. She felt like she could make a new her.
She packs up and heads to Virginia. Within just a few months, things are already looking up.
She got to work on remaking her life again. She got a job selling memberships at a gym.
She enrolled in the local community college. She was working on a degree in technology, radiological technology.
It might look like her days of making bad decisions are over, but they have just begun. That fall, while studying on campus, Candace eyes an attractive fellow student, 19-year-old Dave Williams.
He was handsome. He had a beautiful smile, long braids. Candace was definitely attracted.
Never one to be bashful with men, she prances over to him and strikes up a conversation.
Her pickup line was, "I like your hair, can you braid my hair like that?" And Dave thought that